Hello, humans. That's what they say at Workhuman. I
I
love it.
love that for sure.
Love that. Katie and I are here to share some of our highlights and takeaways from Workhuman. And we are going to invite you to share yours as well. So whether you're here live or in the comments later, please do share. If you are at Workhuman or if there's something that we share that stands out, let us know. And but we want to start with the question that we always ask. What is making work awesome for you this week? So if you are here with us live or in the comments, please share what is making work awesome for you this week. Katie, what's making work awesome for you this week?
Just getting back into the swing of things. Like last week was a weird week because we were at the conference and then we took a couple days off to like get some sun and check out San Diego. And so just getting back into the swing of things and like knowing that we had taken care of everything before we went away, and it didn't feel like a panic before or after. So that was really nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
For me, one thing that's making work awesome for me this week is the purpose workshop we're doing tomorrow. We've got a group of leaders coming, and we are talking about their purpose as leaders and their team's purpose and helping them work with their team to craft purpose statements, which is related to being a working human, right? It
Absolutely.
helps make work awesome when you know your
Yeah. And let me
purpose.
tell you, going through some of their answers this morning, I was just like, they really were getting it. And they were really like touching and vulnerable. And I loved reading. So I'm looking forward to the session too.
Love it.
Hearing what they have to say.
All right. So today's live topic is all about Workhuman Live. And so first, we do want to ask you, do you know what Workhuman is? If you don't know, you need to know. If you are a leader, if you are an HR leader, if you care about humans at work, you should be looking at Workhuman. And so tell us if you use Workhuman at work or if you've been to their Workhuman live event. We're going to share a little bit of information about Workhuman, and then we're going to talk all about our key takeaways from the event. We've got a ton to share because there were so many really awesome, inspiring, and actionable takeaways. And we're going to both be sharing screens and quotes and all kinds of stuff. So bear with us. I want to start by sharing a little bit about Workhuman. So Workhuman is a technology company. They provide software that provides social recognition. So being able to recognize peers, team members, all of that. That is also linked to their reward store with over 1 million merchandise items, experiences, all of that across 180 countries. Their software has come a long way over the past number of years. They also have life events, conversations, which is those kind of performance management and feedback conversations. You can ask for feedback, get feedback, all of that. Service milestones, community celebrations, for things like corporate social responsibility initiatives, all of that. Mood tracker, kind of employee survey software. All of this built into this very human software. At Workhuman, you get a chance to demo it. We also get a chance to use the gratitude bar where you're able to send some
that.
people. Yes, so fun. And what else was I going to say about this? Oh, and we're going to share a few things that their software is using AI to do to help to uncover pain points, to identify opportunities for improvement and solve real challenges, including one of my favorite things. They have this sort of micro coaching in the moment, which I'll share in a minute. But then Workhuman Live is their annual live event, and I have been to 4 now.
This was my first.
Yeah, this was Katie.
Won't be the last.
No, won't be the last for sure. It is the event that I look forward to all year. I just love it. Like we said, we are going to share a bunch of takeaways. And if you were at Workhuman Live, please do share with us what were some of your highlights or takeaways from the event. So we are live on YouTube and LinkedIn right now. If you are here with us, please do let us know in the comments. and let us know what you took away from Workhuman. For us, there were 3 key themes.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're going to
Important
talk.
ones.
There's so much, but we
I
tried to
know.
like
We gotta
we could
keep
be
it. Yeah.
talking to you for days. So we're like, how do we get this done in less than an hour? The 3 themes. We split up and went to all different sessions. So we're going to share back and forth some of the things we heard from our different speakers. And again, want to hear from you as well. The three themes were all around equity, diversity, and inclusion, or diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, whatever you call that in your organization. So we're going to share some things from Workhuman and from some of the speakers around that. The second theme was all around change, resilience, burnout. And again, we both went to some different sessions to share about that. And then finally, one of our favorite topics around creating a culture of psychological safety and feedback. So let's start with the EDI and equity, diversity, inclusion, or diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And like I was thinking we could start with some of the stuff that Workhuman has found in their research, because they have all of these tools and they do a ton of research on equity and all kinds of things, performance and recognition, using their software. They have some interesting information that we can share. So first of all, Workhuman research on equity and how we reward based on gender. So Eric Mosley, the CEO of Workhuman, talked about this and how equity is complicated. So if you look here, you can see how many awards are given based on gender: men to men, men to women, women to men, women to women. And you see that that goes up from men to women, the number of awards. But look at the dollars per award, which goes down. So they're really, really interesting and something to be very, very aware of when we're thinking about who we're rewarding and challenging perhaps our biases that we aren't aware of in how much we're rewarding and how we're rewarding people. So that was the first thing that I really appreciated about their research.
Yeah.
The next thing is I love how they are able to see bias and be able to map that in their software. They can see, are there certain, is there language that's being used? Is there a way that we can like take a look at, is there coaching or training needed for certain teams or managers and that sort of thing? So I thought this was really great, so they can track and map the biases in your organization. And oops, wrong slide. Oh, I thought I had another slide, but the one that I really loved was around microaggressions. So let's say, because there are microaggressions that happen in the workplace all the time, especially with people of color, and I see. Thank you. Hello, Sri. Sri's just joining in. Quite a reflection of us as a society and how we value someone's ability based on gender. Yes, that exactly. The value we're placing on those behaviors based on gender, really, really eye-opening. So their microaggression software, their AI can see that there might be a microaggression in the language that you're giving in a recognition, that you're using in a recognition. And it actually pops up and says, potential microaggression here, maybe you can try rewording this in a different way. And it suggests a different way to say things. And I just love that is like coaching in the moment. You can do all the bias training you want, but it's those in the moment coaching interactions that's really going to start to make a difference. So I love that in the Workhuman software. So
Absolutely.
that's,
Imagine if we had that in our brain.
I know.
To coach us in the moment and stop us before we said anything stupid. It would be wonderful.
Right. And technology is going to help us with that, right? Like I wouldn't be surprised if all of like the Googles and Microsoft, I'm sure Microsoft is working on it in their Teams platform, and like it's coming, right? If it's not already here. Let us know if it's already here. We use Google and we don't see that yet, but maybe it's in Microsoft's software. Okay, then I went and saw Kat Kibben, who talked about job postings and removing bias from job postings. And I have to say, I have not seen Kat speak before. They were definitely a huge highlight for me, like challenged a lot of assumptions. And I'm going to share some of that. And you, on the bias side, you went and saw Eric and Bailey,
I did.
right?
Yes, absolutely.
Uh,
He was also a highlight. I saw him twice, and both times were
and
fabulous.
both times were awesome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'll start with Kat Kibben because it's about the hiring piece, and I feel like that's a good place to start. So one of the things, so Kat Kibben, let me share their websites, 3 Ears Media, and they
With their
focus
dogs.
on
Their dogs. I signed up as soon as you started talking about Cat. I signed up and found out that 3 dogs or 3 ears has something to do with dogs, which I love.
Oh, I
Sorry.
did not know that. And one of the things that they have done is a 100-year research study on the history of job postings. So they went back to like the first job posting on record and aligned job postings to social movements in the world. And when it comes to bias in job postings, one of the things that was found in their research was that job postings have been used to keep people out, not invite people in. And when they said that, I was like, boom, it's
Totally.
one of these little like, oh my gosh, yeah. So some of the things that they talked about, first of all, they talked about buzzwords and banning buzzwords. All of these buzzwords that mean something at your organization, but might mean something else to someone else, like they don't mean anything at all. So do not use buzzwords at all. Things like collaboration might mean something totally different in different companies. So a lot of what Kat talked about was making job postings super clear, honest, like really what's going to happen in that job. And they challenged a lot of the ways of thinking about job postings that we currently do as far as what I see in job postings.
Length.
Oh my goodness, so much. They also talked about the different sort of discrimination that different groups come across. So lots within this. I hope this isn't surprising for people, but really, really important to be aware of. And then some of the really practical tips they gave. One was they talked a lot about changing from talking about seniority or like years of experience that you need to what does that really mean as far as aptitude, autonomy, communication, and people management. Let me just see if I think I have that. No, I don't have that written down. Sorry, I thought I had it. As I go through some of this, I will ask what you're doing to reduce bias in your job postings if you are doing job postings. But okay, so aptitude, what can you do with this tool? So instead of saying you have 8 years of experience using X tool, you're actually putting in your job posting, you have used this tool to build this thing or to do this before. That's what you really want to know, right? It doesn't matter how long they've been using something. You want to know, do they have the experience to do the thing that you want them to do? What's their aptitude with it? They also talked about autonomy. Saying in your job postings, can you do this thing yourself or do you need guidance or supervision? Communication, who do you communicate with? And people management, who do you talk to? Do you manage people? That sort of thing. So these were a couple of examples. Instead of saying 5 years of customer experience, talk about what they will actually do at the job. You'll talk on the phone every day. So making it really clear what the job is so that they can know whether they can do it. One of the other pieces was around bullet points, number of bullet points you should put in a job posting of like requirements. 7 is the max because after 7, women tune out. Women go, oh, I don't have this, right? Oh, here's the slide I thought I had. So these 4 things, looking at aptitude, autonomy, communication, and people management instead of so those were, let me go back because there was a couple of examples. So when I mentioned how job postings have been used to keep people out and not invite them in, one example of this was how in the 1960s, the civil rights movement was happening, right? And that's when college education, college degrees became something that was required on job postings. So isn't it interesting that we started including college degrees when people of color likely didn't have college degrees, right? So talk about job postings keeping people out instead of inviting them in. So when you ask for a college degree, when college degree, a university degree is a privilege, not a right, right? You're saying that you have to have a degree without asking any questions about why that degree is needed, then that can certainly be a racist and like a requirement based on privilege. So the question to ask if you have a hiring manager saying we need this college degree is, what does the person with the degree know that people without the degree don't know? So that you get clear again about what's needed in the job, right? And not like a
So
fake requirement.
interesting. Yeah.
So,
It's so outside of what we grew up knowing, right? Like you had to get a college degree, you have to get a university degree. That has to be the thing that you
yeah.
do. And even
I
Claude
mean,
Silver also said the same thing, that Vayner also doesn't require college degrees anymore. So it's changing.
yeah. And I mean, the research shows that I think it's something like 54% of global workers will require reskilling within the next 3 years. So that
Mhm.
college degree that you might have now is going to mean nothing in 3 years. So why are we basing so much on that? And I just
Yeah.
want to say hi to Lee. Thanks so much for joining. And yes, Sarah, please do join us. Join in the conversation. We're talking all about Workhuman. Okay, Katie, you
Mhm.
went and saw Eric M. Bailey.
I did. President of BSIG Consulting and a #1 best-selling author. He's a diversity leader of the year, an award-winning keynote speaker. He was fabulous. He was hilarious. It was so interactive. He really got right into, how DEIB, EID has become such an HR role that's fallen on the hands of HR leaders, but how it really needs to be up to everybody in the organizations. He talked
Mhm.
about how, like, he asked everybody, he polled everybody, I should say, when did you do your last diversity training? Like 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 5 years ago. A couple people said they'd never been to any diversity training, which was shocking. But
Mhm.
the fact that
Especially
nothing,
HR
especially at an HR conference, I know, but that nothing has really changed, like in all those years, and that conversations need to be updated. We have the same conversations and the same results, and he really is trying to push for different conversations.
Mhm.
Did you see him do Holy Shift at the previous Workhuman? Because he talked about how this was adding on
No.
to his Holy Shift. I'm trying to say
Oh, I
that
didn't see
correctly.
him at the previous work. Oh, because that was one of the ones I didn't get to go
Oh,
to.
okay,
But
okay,
I
yeah,
love, like, I got a chance to meet Eric and I went to
yeah,
his brain date. They
yeah,
also, one of the awesome things that Workhuman did was these brain dates where you could meet with speakers or just with other people who wanted to talk about a topic. So I did go to his, and I love that he talks a lot about brain science because you know how much we integrate
yes.
that into our stuff too. So
Yes. And
what is
I was
it?
totally relating to a lot of the stuff that he said, because we do, when we're in our sessions and our workshops, we do talk about brain science a lot. I know that is one of your passions, is why our brains do all of these things. So
Yeah.
he got us into groups and really asked us to change our perspective on people. We were to share one thing about ourselves that, you wouldn't necessarily know, and just to stay open to it, which I myself had a hard time doing because I'm so used to thinking the way that I think. So I really had to get into a no judgment zone and change what he had said, the illusion of certainty. So, like, I'm certain that the way that I think is the right way, and that's not necessarily the way that it
Wow.
is. So yeah,
Love
yeah, it was
that.
great. Talked about, like, fun facts. You did the slide on bias. Talking about bias always seems to be such, like, a bad, like unconscious bias, and it's always something that we think about as, yeah, something bad, but like it is a way for us to expedite information processing. And so he used the example of, going out and seeing red berries, and red berries, back in the day used to mean like poison, stop, don't do it. And so it's, bias exists to keep us alive. But, bias has become kind of like a bad thing nowadays. So yeah, it was really
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah, I think it's when a lot of like these patterns in our brain that help us, like he explained, to keep us alive. And
Yeah,
unfortunately, the problem is in our society that our society has been built by people that weren't an inclusive group, right?
right.
Um, our society, in at least in North America, is built based on like white kind of white privileged background, and
Yeah,
that does exclude the patterns of the ways of thinking are biased. And so really being aware of that, so that we can start breaking that, is so, so important. And
yeah,
just
and calling it out and the communication around all of it. I think that that's what he really wants, this judgment free zone. Just the understanding behind all of it, like what is makes you so passionate about the way that you think that way, like what is it? And if you can't come up with a really passionate argument to why you feel that way about a certain, type of person or a certain type of thing, then that's, the conversation needs to go on and on. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, love that. And I'm
Yep.
just seeing someone's joined in on LinkedIn, that profound statement about how job descriptions are historically designed to exclude individuals rather than include is quite profound. Yeah, like it, as when I heard that, I was like, oh my goodness, yeah, really, really true. And again, that's Kat Kibben. Can't say enough good things about them.
Yeah.
And I also just see Srivatsen joining in. Um, Microaggressions and biases when selling in the spaces where the decision is made mostly by men and of a specific race, right? Yeah, this shows up everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And let's pass the mic. It's getting harder to see people who look like me, speak like me in these DEI initiatives. Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Are you, Sri, are you saying that you want to be the one talking, or you want?
Sri should be talking. We should
I agree. I agree.
Sri. I feel like we should do a live on some of the stuff. I would love to
I
learn more
love
from
what
you.
Sri posts.
That
Yeah,
would be so
for
great.
sure. Love that. Love that.
Okay. So DEI. Anything else to add on that?
Just the cultural norms thing that they had brought up too. What are the cultural norms
I
that
love
need to change? And
that.
you think about smoking on the job. We think, I like, as soon as that was said, I think about like smoking on a plane, smoking in the movie theater. Remember going to the movies and like standing up to sing "Oh Canada" and smoking, people were smoking cigarettes around you, like those cultural norms that have just like, we look back and we're like, what were we thinking? What how did that become a thing, and how was that okay? And so I can't
Yeah,
wait to see what the new norms are. Norms, whatever norms
I
are. I hate the
know.
word
Yeah.
norms too.
I stuck in at the end of that session and I heard that question, and I thought it was such a great way of bringing it up when he talked about smoking and like, yeah,
Hmm.
how normal that was
Yeah,
everywhere, right?
yeah.
And the number of things in today's world that probably in the future people will say, um, what
How
were
did
they?
that exist? Yeah, yeah.
So
That
love
was
that.
great.
Okay, DEI, that's our key kind of highlights from DEI. We would love to hear what you're doing in your organization to create more inclusive spaces. There are some great things happening in so many organizations. Would love to hear and learn from you. Now we're going to move to change, resilience, and burnout. And I have to start with my favorite of all time Workhuman speaker. I've seen Cy Wakeman speak multiple times. I've seen her speak at Workhuman. I've seen her speak at SHRM conferences. If she's speaking, I'm gonna go. In fact, the first time I saw her speak, I'm just showing this kind of as proof. I walked out of the talk, and as I was walking out, I was on my phone kindling her book because I was like, oh my God, I need more Cy Wakeman in my life immediately. So Cy Wakeman, reality-based leadership, talks about removing drama from the workplace and escaping your ego and all of those things. In this talk that I went to, she was talking about change. And one of the things that she often says is change is not hard. Change is only hard for the unwilling. And it's so true,
Love
right?
that.
So,
Yeah.
question for you, if you're here or in the comments, how much time do you spend trying to get buy-in from others when implementing change? How much time do you spend trying to get buy-in? So she talks about, like, you can't get someone to buy in. Like, buy-in is a verb. They have to choose to buy in. So she shared in this talk the pyramid of readiness. And this is readiness for change. And it's these stages from awareness of the change to driver of the change. And how do you move along that, up that pyramid? So I'm not going to share everything. You have to get her books, all of them. I've just ordered her most recent one, which is a bit more about her personal life story and how she's changed her life. But yeah,
She seems like a
recommend
wonderful human as well. Like, just so
I mean,
open and just
yeah,
amazing.
it's Workhuman. I feel like everyone is wonderful humans there.
That's true. Yeah.
Good. Okay, so I'll share two of the things that she talked about. One was the S bar, which is at that awareness step. That's when people are aware of the change, but they're like maybe disagreeing with it. They are, saying this change won't work. And this is where she talks. I love, she does this a lot. She talks about when people say, "Do you have a minute?" And when they come into your office, the average conversation, minute-long conversation, is 45 minutes long. So, if you have a minute, yeah, I have a minute, but I don't have 45 minutes for you to vent about why you don't like this change, right? But that's what often happens. So what she suggested, the tool, was the S bar. So making it a norm in your workplace to come with, here's the situation in one sentence or less, without all the drama and the story behind it, which is
It
fun.
happens.
Yeah. Share the background, what's relevant that has to do with the future or with your strategy or with what's happening in the organization, your analysis, how you've thought about it, and then your recommendations. And notice there's a plural on recommendations. I think this is so important because she talked about it has to be flexible. You can't just come with a recommendation and this is the only way that this will ever work. And as soon as that happens, you're kind of losing the thread of making the change happen. So this is a way to continue to be accessible and have like an open door policy and have that minute to talk about things and keeping it actually to a contained time, make the best use of the time, and help people to move from totally like being anti the change to figuring out recommendations for how can we make the change happen.
Not S-bar. S-bar.
S-bar. S-bar.
S-bar.
Yes, S-bar. Yes. And then the second tool that she shared was the negative brainstorm. And this is something we actually, when we are talking about change communication, this is where we suggest people spend a lot of time in communicating change. And this is listing all the risks of the change, what could go wrong, why it won't work. Go ahead and give them that chance of like why they think this might not work. And then label it the probability on like low, medium, high. How probable is it that this problem will happen? And what's the impact if it happens, low, medium, high? And then you can focus on the priorities within that negative brainstorm and move people to, okay, knowing that this is a risk with some probability and might have a negative impact, how can we make it happen in a positive way, right? So the shift from like, this won't work to how could we make it work? That is always kind of where she's leading people. I always love Cy Wakeman. So that was Cy Wakeman talking about change and challenging some of our ways of like working to get buy-in and all of that to working with the willing
Yeah.
and moving them up that pyramid.
Awesome.
You went
I
to
saw
some
Siobhan Murray, yeah, how to build resilience and reduce stress. And she started out the session with this really fun balloon experiment where she had somebody balance a balloon that was work. And then she handed her a balloon that was life. And then she said, now here's an unexpected balloon, and handed that to her. And obviously it didn't work. And so it was a great way to think about how we handle burnout and this like, so she brought somebody else on stage and asked them to take a balloon and like asking for help and, really what is burnout? Why does it happen? Workload and perfectionism and lack of time and lots of pressures and lack of support and feedback, and talked about the myth of this work-life balance, which is work-life balance has become one of those buzzwords or those buzzy things that people are talking about all the time. So she's talking about it as a myth. So that I found was really interesting, and really talked about it being a counterbalance, and like, when your life needs more than work, maybe needs to come down a little bit, and that counterbalance, and talked about resilience, certainly, what to do to build resilience, and that resilience isn't bouncing back, which I guess is something that, again, these are things that I were aha moments for me, because to me, when I hear the word resilience, to me, that means bouncing back. It means like, how can you overcome something? And I know we talk a lot about resilience in our leadership groups. And so I guess my question is like, how do you talk about resilience in like a human way and an easily digestible way? And like, what is that? What does that look like so people understand?
Yeah. Yeah. Before I'm going to answer that
Yeah.
from my perspective,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
from like so I am certified by the Resilience Alliance in their personal resilience profile and all of their tools. And what I love about their stuff is that it's super practical and like
Mm-hmm.
real strategies and things that you can do. So I will talk about that. And the other thing that was coming to my mind when you were talking about like burnout and some of the things about why it happens, research also shows that caregiver professions or people who are
Yeah.
caregivers are the ones that get burnt out faster, or like burnout will affect them more.
Yeah.
And when I think about HR professionals, HR managers, HR leaders over the course of the last few years, and the amount of extra care that we all have been
Totally.
responsible for teams across and organizations, like there's no wonder why when we talk to some of our colleagues in HR that they're struggling. And the same goes for leaders. A lot of leaders have been really, really pouring into their teams and taking
Yeah.
care. And if we don't take care of ourselves, we don't have any more care to give, right? So
Absolutely.
anyways, but resilience.
Yes.
So Resilience Alliance would say the resilience is the ability to deal with high levels of challenge and disruption while maintaining high levels of effectiveness and well-being. So it's not like we get hit by a disruption and we just like tank and then like spring back to where we were before. It's like, how do you continue to take care of yourself as you're going through
Yeah.
the challenge? And maybe you end up more effective or more developed on the outcome instead of bouncing back. So first of all, that's how we would
Yeah.
define it. And then what I love is the really practical tools, especially, so there's 4 building blocks of resilience that we always talk about. But the one that I love is the problem solving muscles, which is we have a profile that helps you figure out which muscles you're high or low in so that you know what to strengthen. And then some of the activities around like creating your challenge map and creating your own challenge gym so that you can practice and exercise those muscles and build them so that you can have that like well-being and effectiveness through challenge.
Yeah. I love that.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So we need to do a whole thing on
We
resilience.
could do a whole session on resilience. I know. And I remember the last time we just did a session about resilience, how that group changed so quickly, like into this, like, oh my gosh, I recognize that now. And oh my gosh, like I have something meaningful that I can do to overcome that. And yeah, not just bounce back, but get through it. yeah, it was really meaningful. It was awesome.
So true.
Cool.
Um, okay, and then I just have a couple of final things to share on resilience. And this was from Natalie Kogan. So I'm just going to share a couple of things. She talks about thriving through change. And that is an acronym for these 6 different things to do. And I'm only going to share a couple because you need to buy our book. Buy that book. So what the T stands for treat yourself with compassion. And what I loved, again, I love practical tools. So
Mhm.
she talked about treating yourself with compassion. You know, that inner critic or the drill sergeant that's like our harshest critic who's like putting us down all the time in our heads. I don't know. I say that and I don't know. Does
Yeah.
everyone have that? I know I
Yes.
have. Do you have that? So self-compassion is treating ourselves in the way that we would want others to be treated, right? She shared, there's zero research that shows a link between inner criticism and improvement. So
Wow.
zero, we think that that's going to help us get better because culture kind of tells us that we need to do our best and strive and everything. But that inner criticism never helps. Zero research. In fact, there is research though that shows that if you make a mistake and react with self-compassion, you're twice as likely to learn from it. So
Hmm.
um, the
Interesting.
practical tip, yeah, right? So I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to get better at this. So this is probably why this one stood out to me. The practical tip that she gave is when that inner critic is being loud in your head, to reframe it and ask this question. What would you say to a friend who was in this situation or who felt the way you do? So, like, giving
I
yourself
love
that
that.
distance, that like, oh, what would I say to a friend? We can see things so much more clearly when we remove ourselves from that emotional situation. So, super practical tip for when you're having that voice in your head. That was in the T, treating yourself with compassion. And then the V in Thrive stood for validate your emotions. And so this one was standing out to me. We have an emotional intelligence workshop coming up at the end of this month. And I was thinking about this and how so often as leaders, we think we have to hide our emotions. And there are actually studies that show that when we don't share how we're feeling, our teams have less trust in us. They experience more burnout. So important as leaders to be able to share about how you're feeling. And what she talked about was asking these 2 questions. Um, how am I feeling? So, and being clear on that. And we often use the Junto emotion wheel. You can find that
Yeah.
on the internet to like label your emotions. Emotion literacy is like the first step. But then her second question, I really liked this. Given how I'm feeling, what would be helpful for my colleagues to know? So that is that really intelligent, like taking the emotion into that intelligent kind of way of thinking about it. Like what would help my colleagues to know about how I'm feeling right now? And maybe like, you know, what they might be noticing from you, how you might be reacting to understand a little bit, or like what you might need differently from people or from the work right now. So really loved, again, those practical tools from Natalie Kogan.
I love that. I love that what would be helpful because we do write those stories in our head. And so when you see somebody who's obviously going through something, like my default is like, oh my gosh, what did I do? Oh my gosh, what did I not do? Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
what's my part in their feeling that way? Not realizing that like it
No,
probably
there's
has
something.
nothing to do with me.
Yes.
Right?
So
It's
true.
the
So
ego. But
yeah.
yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
love that.
So that was change, resilience, burnout, takeaways from Cy Wakeman and Siobhan Murray and Natalie Kogan. And now our third and final topic, self
Yes.
culture of psychological safety and feedback. So why
Yeah.
don't you start?
Oh, why don't I start? I saw Claude. Am I saying that right? Claude
Silver?
Silver. Yeah, from
Yeah.
Vayner, Vayner
Media.
Media. Um, just talking about like how we all have a facade of armor in front of us, and that again, emotions. Talked about emotions that you know, for the longest time we were saying that emotions weren't allowed, and we put on a work mask, and that's just not a good way of working anymore, and that's how we lose people in the workplace. You know, that is that was such a topic, retention and losing people, and like really what is the best way to keep humans around.
Yeah.
And that, they talked about showing no emotion and how much that has to change nowadays. So
Mhm.
needing more humanity in the workplace, and that's the only way to have a psychologically safe workplace. So
Yes.
yeah.
Totally.
Isha Vicaria from Workhuman as well shared results survey that they did with 4,100 people around employee recognition and strategic recognition and its link to a psychologically safe workplace. I think we had a couple slides too that were really
Oh,
interesting.
we probably do. Let me see.
Yeah.
I think this might be one.
Yep. Perfect. So really talking about how psychological safety, belongingness, feeling valued, seen, taking risks without fear of repercussions, and pushing boundaries really increases whoop, where are we? Sorry, really increases the way that people feel in the workplace. And they specifically talked about check-ins, and Jason Lawrence, and I think Jason from past sessions
Jason is
as
a
well.
good friend and awesome speaker and leader.
Yeah, so he
Check-ins
was
as
supposed to be there, but he had some issues with travel, so he wasn't able to be there. But really, they got down into the down and dirty of checking in with people on a regular basis and making them quality check-ins, not just about performance or ratings, but really about human experience.
well.
Um,
Yeah. I
yeah,
heard I
so
heard at some point over the pandemic, checking in, not checking on. And I think that's like such an important thing to realize. You're not checking on the work or checking on that they're working or that
yeah.
they're like putting in their time or whatever. You're checking in to see how they're doing and building
Yeah.
the connection and relationship, right?
And that was, they passed around a microphone kind of at the end, and that was one of the big things that people were asking about, like checking in versus micromanaging, or checking in versus checking on. Like, how do you really qualify which is which? And
Yeah.
of course, the conversation was about the quality of the conversations, and it doesn't have to be about strategies, and it doesn't have to be about ratings, and like it really has to be about the human side of things. So
Yeah.
um,
We know, just like thinking about from our experience, like we will sometimes use a check-in generator. So there's
yep,
many of them out there. One of the ones that I love is Who Cards. I think it's whocards.cc is
yep,
the URL. I also loved, we're going to talk about Esther Perel because we can't talk about Work
no.
Human Live without mentioning her. Um, she talked about her Where Should We Begin game cards, which
Hmm.
are like, I think they're check-in questions. They like
Totally.
some of them, and I looked at it more in depth, and I'm probably going to order some, Katie, so be ready.
Okay.
But I think they have some like safe for work and not safe for work because she is a relationship therapist. So there's probably
Yes.
some
Yeah.
that talk about things we're not talking about in the workplace, but they're color coded and you can like choose the work relevant ones. But like really deep questions. Another person who I love for this is Jan Keck. Jan has moved into like he does a lot of like facilitation and like virtual facilitation training now, but how he started was ask deep questions. He has a deck of cards. I have them. I don't have them up here with me because I actually put them out at parties. Like no lie, I have them at
Of
coffee
course you did.
tables. I know. I have them at coffee tables. Ask deep questions, and he has like levels of them. Anyways, all of these check-in questions. And then what we do is a check-in 1 to 10 question. Like often, like a 1 to 10 on like how engaged are you feeling these days? How just anything about more about life though,
Hmm.
oftentimes than about work, unless you have a specific work related thing to
Yeah.
check in on. But yeah, it opens that deeper question.
It does. And so the question was also asked, like, what if the person doesn't feel like they want to share, or that they're in a psychologically safe enough place to share? And so it just went really back to the like leader having to share first vulnerably, and like opening it
Mm,
up and
love that.
asking that great question, and like being the thing that opens up the
Yeah.
dialogue. So yeah. So this was part of Jason's ask a great question. Again, those 1 to 10 questions are always great. The follow-up question, if it's a scale of 1 to 10 and you were an 8, what is it going to take to bring you up an extra notch?
Yeah.
And then, offering compassion and support, really listening. Like we talk about empathic listening, which I love as well.
Mhm.
Trying to really get the meat and potatoes of it.
Yes,
Put
yes.
yourself in those shoes. And then,
Awesome.
yeah, support and encouragement. And
Okay.
Lovey. We
Jump.
love Lovey.
I
We
love
love
Lovey. This is
Lovey.
me
Yes.
telling Lovey how much I love her.
Yes.
Um, Lovey Ajayi Jones. Let me just stick her URL up there. She was one of the keynotes. And when we talk about psychological safety, she kind of gave the opposite kind of spin on it. And she talks about being a professional troublemaker. I'll
Love
take down
that.
a picture of us, even though I love taking so I totally love this. And, a lot of times we think we're doing well because people aren't disagreeing with us or we're not getting a lot of conflict in our meetings or whatever. And that is not actually good. If you are surrounded by people who are just agreeing with you all the time, something is desperately wrong. So,
As I'm nodding my head with you. Yes. Yes, ma'am. You're right.
so I know, right? There's a lot of things that the psych safety, the check-ins, all of that stuff. And think about us as individuals in the room and how can we be what Lovey calls a professional troublemaker.
Yeah.
So I loved this. She talked about there's 3 people who knew better that didn't say something. And so, question for you all, I'm going to share what the 3 people are and ask you, which person have you been? Because I can be honest, I've been all 3 of these people before, for sure, depending on how
Yes.
safe I felt in different rooms or what my experience had been being a professional troublemaker in certain rooms before. So the first person is it's not my department kind of person. This is not my department, not my place, not my circus,
Not
whatever.
my circus, not my clowns.
So that person, she related this to that bystander syndrome in psychology, where there's that one really famous example of someone being attacked in a courtyard and people saw from the windows and multiple people saw it happening and saw other people seeing it happening, and everyone just thought someone else would call for help and no one did. And so it's that bystander syndrome where the more people you think will do something, the less likely you are to do the thing. So she said, when you're sitting at that table, how much closer could you be to being the person that makes the change, to being a person who speaks up, right? And every single day we can take small actions that make big changes. So that's that not my department, not my place.
Yeah.
The second person is the one who goes I wanted to say something, but I don't want to deal with the consequences later.
Yeah.
And so this is a really good challenge for us HR leaders and anyone who has any kind of power, and power doesn't necessarily come from position. The fear of consequences is real, especially for people on the margins.
Yes.
The what happens when you're, say, a person of color is 50% of the work you're doing is actually the job, and the other 50% is that you're making sure you're not offending or you're adjusting your language and your tone to fit. And so when you think about the amount of energy that people who don't have the privilege that some of us have are bringing into those meetings, how can we, with the privilege and some of that power, be the one to speak up and reduce that consequence for them, right? So think about the power you wield. Is the punishment actually going to come? Are you really going to get fired for speaking up and opposing an idea or saying what might go wrong? And how can you wield your power so that someone with less power isn't paying the consequences? So really, really liked that challenge for those of us who do have privilege or power in these rooms.
Yeah.
And then that third person, why do
That's
I always
Lovey.
have to be the one to say something?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Honestly, I have been that person. I
Me
remember
too.
a specific team where I was like, I'm always the freaking one speaking up, and people would come to me after and be like, "Oh, thank you for saying something," because that knew this was a restaurant company. Oh my gosh, what they're planning with that menu is never going to work. And I'd be like, "Yeah," and they're still going to move forward because I'm the only one who said anything.
Yeah.
Like,
The people that agree with you afterwards, they're like, "Oh, I totally agreed with what you said during that meeting." And you're like,
yeah.
why didn't you say something?
Yes, and
Yeah.
I love Lovey called this a micro appreciation. Like, oh, I really
Right.
appreciate how you spoke up. That is, nobody needs a micro
Nobody knows. Yeah.
appreciation, just like nobody needs a microaggression, right? This is like, why didn't you use your voice in the room? So if you can't be the troublemaker who's speaking up, be the second or third. Be
Yeah.
that person. You know, I think of that video. Have you ever seen the How to Start a Movement video on YouTube, Katie?
Maybe if you
Okay.
explain to me.
It shows like this concert on a lawn, and everyone's just sitting on the lawn, like listening to the music. And then this one guy starts dancing, and he's dancing by himself for a while. And then someone else joins in, and they're the second person. And all of a sudden, this becomes this group of people dancing, and it's that second person that created the movement.
Love it.
So I just it made me think of that.
Yeah.
So, which person have you been? I can say that I've been all of these
Me
people.
too.
But Lovey really challenged like the way of thinking about this. Like, if you are in a room and you don't speak up, this question to ask yourself: will my silence or inaction convict me? When you walk out of the room and that thing that everyone's talking about is going forward and it's a disaster, and you didn't say something, like, and someone goes, "Were you in that meeting? Didn't you say something?" Like,
Yeah.
what are you going to say? Like, how are you going to handle that with integrity? And like, such an important question.
Yeah.
And then I loved these 3 questions. So if you are thinking of saying the thing, here's the things to ask yourself. And this is where I will be honest, this is helpful because I don't know that I say it thoughtfully all the time, for sure, myself,
Yeah.
but in the
Yeah.
past especially.
Yeah.
Being able to defend it and having some like reasons why you are speaking up. And this is where Cy Wakeman's S-bar can be really helpful, right? If
Yeah.
you use the S-bar as a professional troublemaker, you're really, really cooking with gas.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, do I mean it? What I'm saying? Can I defend it? And can I say it thoughtfully? And if you can say yes to all of those things, then you should say the thing.
Yeah. The thoughtfully part. Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
And you might have to step away to do all that,
Yeah.
like, yeah, I think that's.
Yeah, that's where I'm not good at stepping away and then going back. I have to say the thing.
Something in the moment. Yeah. Yeah.
That's right. Sometimes mess up. But how are you cultivating professional troublemakers? This is that create psychological safety, right?
Totally.
So one of the things that we suggest when we do psychological safety workshops is nominating a red team or nominating some devil's advocate in your team, or in a meeting or in a project meeting, whatever that is, so that they have explicit permission to challenge what's going wrong. So red teams this is something used in military operations, like CSIS uses this in Canada, or CIA probably in the States. When the blue team is the ones planning the mission, and there's always a red team that's poking holes in the mission and saying where it'll go wrong so they can plan a better mission, right?
Yep.
So do that, nominate those people and make it explicit.
Yeah.
So, okay,
love it.
Whew, we have talked about so much.
We didn't even talk about Esther.
I know. Esther Perel. Come on.
Huh.
Katie, what'd you think?
I've been following Esther Perel through her relationship podcasts and everything for quite a while, and so she was who introduced me to Workhuman before you and I had even talked about it. It showed up.
Funny.
I know, it showed up that she was speaking there, and I was like, "What is this Workhuman thing?" And then I clicked on it, and I was like, "This is something we need to go to." And so I reached out to Pam, and Pam's like, "Yeah, I'm already going." So yeah, it was happening. But she really has a way of making you question everything that you think is normal or a way of thinking, and doing it with such thought and such
Great
interest and
compassion.
compassion. And I don't know. What did you think?
Yeah. So she
I was really tired that morning, so you probably got out of it a little bit more than I
No,
did. I was
I like,
heavily jet lagged.
and that morning I was writing in my little notebook, so I
Yeah.
took like pages of notes. Um, she talked about 3 parallel revolutions happening in relationships in life and work. The first was unprecedented expectations, and how, so I'm going to just stick to the work ones. Work used to be like the place to, we now expect so much of work. We expect work to be our source of purpose, fulfillment, and community. She talked about how, in the past, maybe religion or something like that fulfilled some of those needs in our lives, but now we're expecting that of work. So that was an interesting challenge for me, because we are always on the side of like, let's make work awesome. It should be awesome. We spend so much time at work. It should be purposeful, fulfilling.
It put a lot of pressure on work. Yeah.
She also talked about the role of emotions. And on the work side, she talked about that being like, we expect from work that we can be authentic, have trust, empathy, psychological safety. And like, she's saying this and challenging that assumption. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we do expect that.
We do.
So I still don't, she hasn't convinced me otherwise, but it does make you think like, yeah, we're expecting a lot of work.
Yeah.
And then the third thing was, we've moved from a production and service economy to an identity economy. So like, work used to be about sustenance and putting food on the table, and now it's about our identity and our purpose and our meaning. And we used to leave a job because the factory closed, and now we leave because we're not being recognized enough.
Yeah.
That's part of our identity. So
does it match with our values?
Yeah. And so here's the big question. The big question that I'm still thinking about.
I know.
Stop thinking about this. About, is it right to expect so much of work? Like, is it? And like, I'm still leaning to the side of, yes, as leaders and organizations, we need to do better for people.
Yeah.
Because we impact their lives so much.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I'm like,
yeah. Your HR leaders and your management can't be
a therapist
as well. Exactly. I know, it's really hard. And especially when we're at something like Workhuman, where we're talking about more human leadership, it's like, how much more human can we get so that that all falls on work as well? And how much do we take on as individuals? To be in charge of that as well. So yeah, she was really thought-provoking, and she was kind of like the intro to the whole 3 days there, and really like you walk away and you're like, okay. So over these next few days, where can I take what she said and really like put it into place with everything that I'm learning over the next few days? And so
yeah. So if you are here watching in the replay or live, we would love to hear what you think. Like, are we expecting too much of work? I do think we're expecting too much of certain roles.
Yeah.
I do think we need to rethink what a manager is responsible for and what an HR leader is responsible for and all of that. Like, I do think there are some needs for reinventing some of these roles, because we are expecting too much. It's like through the pandemic, things just got piled on and nothing got taken away. But is it right to expect so much of work? And I don't know, which is why I'm going to ask you to find a way to make work awesome today, because that's what we're all about.
Yep.
We are all about improving people's lives by making work awesome. And we know that anyone in any role can find a way to make work better and improve work for themselves and their colleagues. So we want to encourage you to, maybe there's a tip that we shared today that will help. Find a way to make work awesome today. Yeah.
That's it.
That's it. So let us know what your highlights were from Workhuman. And next year, Workhuman is in
Austin.
Austin.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know you were doing a drum roll.
So exciting. I have already been to a Workhuman in Austin, and Austin is so fun.
And Pam really wants some cool cowboy boots. So
I'm looking forward to cowboy boots and bats in Austin.
The bats,
The bats in Austin and getting some cowboy boots.
Yeah.
So we will be at Workhuman next year. I want to encourage you, follow us, because I'm sure we will have a link for or a code for a discount next year as well. So follow us, and we hope to see you there.